Today I'm going to talk about a few pieces. This first one is called Rise. It was sometimes called Orbit, depending on the vocabulary that we made on it. And this was years and years ago. It was made in 1995. I think everyday objects are more beautiful than anything you could manufacture. But I think we were walking through this space and there was this gorgeous long pole and it was fat. And I said, where did this come from? You know, and oh, some circus company was here and they left their pole rig behind. I said, can I have it? And I asked one of my technical directors at the time to just throw it in the truck. Its actual use, I think, was either to hold a tent up. And I dreamt about that pole. Could this, because this has to be asked as time goes on, could this possibly be a successful piece? It was a 24-foot pole, 20-foot pole, and its diameter was something like 5 inches. So my dream was to stick it vertically somehow in the space that we were rehearsing in. So at any rate, my choreographic problem with this pole was I decided it was a duet. I had this idea that if the diameter was 5 inches, the rotational capacity for it could help add momentum in a certain rate of circling to this, so that as the dancers got horizontally on this pole, they would be able to share it. There'd be enough landscape for them, enough ground for them as they went around, and sometimes attached to each other, and sometimes did flips when they were out closer to the ground and the cables were longer. There is some poetry to it, circling like that, like you were free. To have something so gorgeous, this perfect vertical that beveled up at the end, frozen in space without digging down 10 feet or using too much hardware, was a problem that we dealt with for quite a while we were building this piece during those years, which would have been probably from 93 to 95. A number of technical directors were our leaders in technical solutions in odd ways. We always would have complicated prototypes that would either break because of the forces that they enacted on the bodies and the bodies enacted on them. As they got up to the top, my problem was, just technically with this piece, was the cables got so short that they were glued to the top. So really almost all they could do was put their stomachs on the pole, head down, and kind of scudge down until it got long enough till they could again gain the ground that is their pole and start doing other vocabulary. When you're flying with a rig, a harness that circles, has a circling ring embedded in it, and also is attached to some place up high. I've discovered over the years, and I think circus artists know this just inherently, you have to have the endpoint at least 8 feet above where your connection with the top of this pole is, so that you can have access to the pole from the very bottom to the very top. Otherwise, it gets sequestered and smushed when you get to the top, which for me was always formally incorrect. And I felt that artistically and technically, it was not a perfect rig, it was not a perfect idea. However, if you try and have a pole that's 20 feet high, and then you need another 8 feet, and you're talking close to 30, good luck finding a theater that has a proscenium height that high, and also that you can cart around in a 53-foot truck all over the country and the world. So sometimes we had to compromise. And as the dancers ran around as it began and the motors started to raise them up, they were doing just this beautiful sort of salmon-like moves and just completely suspended in the air. There was no impact in this piece, which was rare. But the momentum of the circling was my force field that I was able to create all of these moves with, just because of the fact that it was circling, and I delved deeply into centripetal force in a gentle way, because when the cables were long, it was gorgeous, and as they sort of ran up the air around the pole and were able, when they got to a certain height, to touch the pole. When they would put their bodies horizontally, they could do flips and flips and flips. And Deanne could attach to Aaron, and Aaron could attach to Deanne and grab each other's feet or be a body double. And we started to invent these moves as a duet, as a coupling. It wasn't a series of solos. They needed each other sometimes to be able to do the circling rotations, to be able to flip and incorporate the power of the centripetal force in the circling around the pole. Like all of these different beautiful notions, I just would draw them. The first one was just, let's just run and then hit the air, run and hit the air. And we build these moves 1 millisecond at a time. I don't think beforehand, oh, what order should they go in? But a lot of times the equipment or the idea will designate, are you going to start from the top where you're trapped up there because the cables are smearing you to the top of the pole, or are you going to start on the ground where you have the most freedom? So a lot of times the equipment that we decide to manifest into our playground of forces and hardware tells you what to do. It starts to remove the choices from you. And it took me many, many years to not fight the equipment or fight the aesthetic, because in my drawing books, you know, I could draw anything I wanted. And then when I got to real time, real space, I was intercepted by reality and the fact of gravity.